The Sutra of Vajra. Chapter 10. Master versus Student, the legend of the warrior on fire. Adamus' heart raced as green energy surged through his body, wrapping around him like an electrifying aura. His gold Tenchi no Mi glowed brightly, he zigzagging like a beam slicing through the air as he moved with unyielding speed. People were being freed in his wake, as he knocked down pig guards and military forces, obliterating robots with precision. He passed citizens, handing out weapons, empowering them to fight back. Every stride took him closer to his goal. I'm coming. Stay alive, Kyoheim, Adamus thought, his determination burning brighter with each step. And I know for a fact, last time we fought, he was holding back. She can't deal with both of them. His pace faltered for a moment as his thoughts spiraled back to the last clash. He could still see Nagar's devastating swords tearing through his hands, the pain sharp even in recollection. He glanced down at his hands while running, the phantom a reminder of how close he had come to defeat. The path ahead grew more treacherous with every stride, but Adamus kept his focus on the mission, fighting crime, saving lives, and reaching Kyoheim before it was too late. What he didn't realize was that someone was following him closely. Nathan Hunter was lurking just behind, shrouded in shadows, carefully maintaining his distance to avoid detection. Adamus, unaware of the silent pursuit, pressed onward, the urgency of his task driving him faster. The chase continued, his focus razor sharp, as he vowed not to fail Kyoheim. Narrator, these are the events that happened before the explosion. From Kyoheim's point of view. The explosion was cataclysmic, a moment that fractured time and space for those caught in its wake. Moonshadow, his voice like a tempest, had initiated it all. Slamming his palms together, he chanted with commanding authority, Koroni Zephyr. Above, the coffin he had summoned earlier roared to life, ascending like a blazing comet. It hovered ominously, its wooden frame creaking with an ancient power. Then, with a deafening crack, the coffin split open, releasing a torrent of energy. The force was cataclysmic, a spiraling wave of destruction that tore through the earth, ripping apart the very ground beneath them. Fissures opened wide as if the world itself had shattered, and the shockwave was relentless, sending everything and everyone into chaos. Adamus, Kyoheim, Talwaria, Nagar, and Hunter were powerless against the blast. It hurled them like leaves caught in a hurricane, separating them into different directions. Kyoheim, Talwaria, and Nagar were flung together, their cries swallowed by the roaring winds. Adamus was launched skyward, the world spinning around him, while Hunter disappeared into the chaos, his fate momentarily unknown. Kyoheim soared through the air, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the chaos. Her thoughts were sharp, focused. I can't waste any time. I have to hurry. A black belt samurai, and a brown belt samurai are after me. I need to stay on my toes. As she scanned the horizon, the presence of something new, someone dangerous prickled at her senses. She twisted mid-flight, her instincts flaring. A massive sword suddenly tore through the air toward her, its blade gleaming with lethal intent. Kyoheim reacted instantly, her body a blur of motion. She raised her Muramasa katana, its snake-shaped hilt fitting perfectly in her grip. The clash was explosive, the impact reverberating through her arms. Her skill and precision shone as she deflected the attack, sending the blade away in a streak of sparks. The momentum from the clash carried her downward, and she descended with practiced grace, landing softly on her feet. Her katana gleamed in the faint light as she stood her ground, poised and ready, her sharp gaze locked on the source of the attack. The battlefield was chaotic, but Kyoheim's resolve burned brighter than ever. The samurai were near, and she would not be caught off guard again. The samurai stood before her, two formidable opponents, Talwaria, his massive notaki gleaming in the dim light, and Nagar, the warrior who had already tested Kyoheim's limits once before. Their presence was as oppressive as the storm brewing in Kyoheim's heart. Talwaria ascended gracefully from the ground, his weapon poised. His steady stance was marked by a smirk of condescension as he began to clap slowly. You were always the number one student when it came to combat, he said, his tone both mocking and begrudging. You trained her well, Nagar. Nagar simply nodded, his expression unreadable, yet his silence carried a weight of agreement. Kyoheim lowered her katana, her voice trembling not with fear but with a mix of fury and heartbreak. I didn't kill Princess Akemi Yamamoto, she began, her words spilling out as if they could bridge the gulf of misunderstanding between her and the men she once called allies. She was a mother to me. She is my mother. She adopted me, loved me, raised me. She meant everything to me. Why won't you believe me? Her voice cracked as she continued, the memory of Akemi's death flooding her thoughts. When she died, I was holding her lifeless body. Her last words to me were, it was my brother. The two samurai gasped in shock, their disbelief hanging in the air. How dare you accuse the prince, they demanded, their eyes narrowing in suspicion. Kyoheim stood firm, her gaze unwavering. Yes, those were her last words. Why would she lie to me in her final moments? I know he did it. He's always been jealous of her leadership, her position, being the firstborn. She took a deep breath, her voice shaking but resolute. Please, give me a chance to speak with our leader, Miyamoto Yamamoto, and tell him what happened. Tawaria's eyes narrowed. His voice cut through her plea like the blade of his notaki. Liar. We all know you did it. You're nothing but a demon. She never should have adopted you. It's a shame, but if you think about it, this all works out for the better. Kyoheim's grip tightened on her weapon, her golden eyes blazing with fury. Take that back, she hissed. How dare you? Her death never should have happened. Talwaria shrugged, his smirk deepening. She was truly a beautiful woman. I used to draw her all the time. He reached for his eye patch, revealing the cruel glint of the power he concealed beneath it. I even tried to use my special ability on her once. But she was too powerful. It never worked. Every other woman, though. My eyes made them do whatever I wanted. She was the one exception. His tone turned darker, laced with venomous laughter. Still, it's a good thing she's gone. Think about it. She was the firstborn of our clan, the samurai, and the leader of our sister clan, the Onaba Geisha. With Miyamoto Musashi's death creeping closer every day, the rules dictated that her father's leadership would pass to her. But now, her brother stands to lead both clans. A man will guide us, as it should be. Kyoheim's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in realization. That only proves what I've been saying, she shot back, her voice trembling with righteous anger. This is all a setup. Her brother did it, he killed her just to seize power. And I will go to the High Council of Samurai. I will tell them, and I will stop him. Nagar stepped forward, his presence as menacing as the blade at his side. You're not going anywhere, he said, his voice cold and final. We've been ordered to kill you. And most importantly, we need those eyes of Akemi Yamamoto back. Especially the ability Taishi. Kyoheim raised her katana, its snake-shaped hilt gleaming in the dim light, as she dropped into a battle-ready stance. Her voice rang out, filled with unwavering resolve. You're not stopping me. Not now. I'm going back to the air realm, to the samurai stronghold, to the High Council. Most importantly, I'll confront my grandfather, Miyamoto Yamamoto, and tell him the truth. Nagare stepped forward, his face contorted with anger. You're not going anywhere, he spat, his voice thick with contempt. No council of samurai will listen to you. Miyamoto Yamamoto might be the leader, but he's too old and too weak to lead anything. When was the last time he made a real decision? His son, the prince, and his daughter, Princess Akemi Yamamoto, they were the ones driving this order. Now, with the princess out of the way, leadership can finally be in good hands. Tawareya, observing the tense exchange, extended a hand to stop Nagare mid-step. Let me fight her, he said, his voice brimming with arrogance. This will be easy. Nagare crossed his arms and stepped back, his face a mask of disdain. Fine. But don't waste time. Tawareya unsheathed his massive sword, its blade gleaming menacingly as he took a step forward. This is destiny, he began, his tone filled with self-importance. Me, fighting you. Defeating you. And then the prince of all the samurai praising my triumph for avenging his sister's killer. I'll be right by his side, elevated to glory. He grinned, relishing his own words. After all, we've all heard what the granny sage of samurai said. The great granny samurai herself foretold it. She spoke of a great warrior on fire with eyes of gold. And we've all seen it, the prince of the samurai. His golden eyes, his unmatched power. He is the warrior on fire. The prophecy fits him perfectly. And I'll be there, by his side, as it all unfolds. Kiyohim's voice cut through his monologue like a blade. No, you're wrong, she shouted, her conviction unwavering. The warrior on fire's heart is supposed to be pure. The great granny sage made that clear. Someone like him, selfish and power-hungry, could never fulfill that prophecy. He's the killer. He took my mother's life for his own gain. Her eyes burned with intensity as she continued, and besides, I think I found the real warrior on fire. Nagare burst into laughter, his voice echoing with mockery. You found the warrior on fire? This should be good. Who's your chosen savior, then? Kiyohime met his gaze without hesitation. I remember that day perfectly when the great samurai granny sage felt my energy. That's when she saw the prophecy. I know for a fact it's Adamus, also known as Vajra. He is the warrior of legend. Nagare's laughter grew louder, filled with scorn. Vajra? That little brat who killed my brother? Him. A legendary anything? Please. He's light work. I almost defeated him in less than a minute. He's no warrior on fire. His expression hardened as he took a step forward. Enough talking. Fight. Tawareya smirked, his confidence unwavering. You're right. Let's fight, he declared, pointing his weapon at Kiyohime as he steadied his stance. His movements were deliberate as he began pacing back and forth, his blade resting casually at his side. He reached up to his eye patch, toying with it as though unveiling a secret. As soon as I release this eye, he said, his voice dripping with menace, this fight is over. Your fate is already sealed, just as mine has been right beside the warrior on fire. In a dramatic flourish, Tawareya stabbed his massive sword into the ground. The blade quivered as he formed precise hand signs with practiced speed, invoking the mystical gestures of the Kyujin. With a booming voice, he chanted, Mutation Realm Murai no Mi Oigaku. Painting the eye of the future. A giant scroll materialized before him, unfurling in midair before settling gracefully onto the ground. He dropped into a seated, cross-legged position, his presence commanding and unshaken. Reaching behind him, he grasped a colossal paintbrush. All I need, he said with a sinister grin, is your blood. Then this fight is over. Tawareya's voice thundered again as he announced, Earth Realm Bunchin, clone of the Earth Spirit. With a flick of his hand, he grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground. The soil shimmered with energy before molding itself into a perfect replica of Tawareya. The clone pulled a sword identical to the originals and stood ready in a fighting stance, its expression as cold and calculating as its creator. Kiyohime raised her katana, determination blazing in her eyes. Her thoughts raced. What does he mean he needs my blood? But she quickly shook the question from her mind. It doesn't matter. I'll finish this quickly. Kiyohime lunged forward with blinding speed, FTL+, her katana gleaming as it aimed to cleave the sitting Tawareya in two. But just before her strike could land, his clone materialized in her path, its massive notaki intercepting her attack. Sparks and steel clashed violently as their blades collided, the force of the impact reverberating through the battlefield. From his seat, Tawareya chuckled, his voice dripping with sinister confidence. You'd better hope I don't get your blood, he taunted, his giant paintbrush gliding across the scroll before him. Because if I do, it's over. I'll paint your destruction stroke by stroke. Kiyohime leapt back, creating distance between herself and the clone, but it pursued her relentlessly, its blade swinging in powerful arcs. Each strike of its massive sword was precise, calculated, and unyielding, yet Kiyohime's flawless footwork kept her just out of reach. She danced like a snake, dodging each devastating swing with effortless grace. Her focus wavered for only a moment as her eyes darted to the original Tawareya, who continued stroking the scroll with calm deliberation, his movements hypnotic. What is he drawing? Kiyohime thought, her mind racing. What spell has he cast? As her blade met the clone's in another clash, realization struck her. Each stroke of the warrior's brush seemed to synchronize with the clone's movements. They're connected, she thought. He's controlling it with the strokes of his brush. With a determined glint in her eye, Kiyohime pushed forward. The clone's blade descended toward her in a final, decisive strike, but she twisted her weapon in a masterful maneuver, deflecting the massive notaki to the side. In one fluid motion, she surged forward with blinding super speed, driving her katana into the clone's stomach. This ends now, she screamed, her voice ringing like thunder. Her blade flared with an ominous purple glow, dark energy crackling along its edge as poisonous ichor dripped from its surface. Mutation style, Jashin Serpent's Sting. As her blade pierced the clone's core, a surge of violet energy erupted, engulfing the clone in a cataclysmic blast. The earth trembled as the clone disintegrated, its form obliterated in an explosion of dark power. Kiyohime turned sharply, her blazing eyes locking onto Tawareya. Get up and fight me, she commanded, her voice fierce and unyielding. Tawareya's grin widened, his amusement undiminished. Impressive, he said, rising to his feet with deliberate ease. You destroyed one clone. But that was barely a fraction of my strength. Let's see how you handle many more. He thrust his hand into the earth, his fingers curling around another fistful of dirt. With a sinister chant, he roared, Earth Realm Bunchin, clones of the Earth Spirit. The ground quaked as dozens of clones began to rise, their forms twisting and growing with unsettling variety. Some were grotesquely massive, towering over Kyoheim at 12 feet tall, their swords oversized and brimming with destructive potential. Others bore bulging, grotesque arms, their mutated forms exuding an aura of raw, untamed power. Yet all bore Tawaria's face, their expressions cold and merciless, and all wielded the deadly Notaki. Kyoheim steadied herself, her blade still aflame with seething dark energy. The air around her vibrated with tension as the horde of clones advanced, their movements synchronized like a tide of inevitability. This is your end, Tawaria said, his voice echoing across the battlefield. Kyoheim raised her blade, her resolve unshaken. We'll see, she replied, her voice as sharp as her sword. The dark energy surrounding her weapon flared brighter, a storm of negative power coiling around her like a serpent ready to strike. Kyoheim smirked, her confidence unwavering. So you want to go all out? Fine. Bring hundreds clones, it won't matter. Her energy surged as she began to power up, her hair rising with the immense force radiating from her body. Her once steady gaze turned otherworldly as her eyes shifted from black to an intense, glowing purple. Darkness enveloped her, her aura pulsing with raw, chaotic power that stained the sky above. Rain began to fall, each drop sizzling as it touched her charged form. Tawaria and Nagair froze, their expressions a mixture of awe and fear. Tawaria's cocky grin faded, while Nagair's voice trembled as he shouted, impossible. This energy, it's rising beyond anything I've ever felt. Her technique, her Toru Meiho, is surpassing all limits. Nagair's eyes widened further as he observed the swirling field around Kyoheim. I can see her toroidal energy field manifesting physically, he exclaimed. And it's not just her power. Those eyes, they're the legendary Toki no Mi, the eyes of time. She's using the powers of Princess Akimi Yamamoto, her mother. Kyoheim's scream reverberated through the air as her power climbed higher, her aura now so intense that it took on a tangible, visible form. The environment itself seemed to yield to her presence. Trees bent, rocks hovered, and even raindrops slowed, caught in her higher dimensional gravitational pull. Can be skipped. Narrator echoed, explaining the phenomenon. Every creature possesses a toroidal energy field, an infinite loop of universal energy coursing through them. But the samurai have mastered this field with their magic, known as Toru Meiho. This art allows them to manipulate their energy fields, creating a dynamic connection between the elements of the body and the universe. Kyoheim's mastery of this energy is unparalleled, her field now visible to the naked eye. It interacts with the elements around her, mirroring the interconnectedness of all existence. At its peak, this mastery transcends mere flow and resonance. Kyoheim's toroidal field can bend the fabric of reality itself, warping time and space, exerting higher dimensional pressure, and rewriting gravity and causality. Even beings who claim dominion beyond time and space find themselves bypassed by her art, as Toru Meiho does not merely move within existence, it weaves directly into the principles that underlie it. End of narration. The toroidal energy around Kyoheim expanded, becoming so dense and powerful that particles of light and energy danced visibly in the air. The energy field took on the shape of a massive, glowing torus, spinning around her body like a celestial phenomenon. Objects began to hover, caught in orbit around her, drawn by the immense gravity of her presence. Tawaria stared in disbelief. What is this? He muttered, gripping his Notaki tightly. Nagair, his voice now a whisper of fear, murmured, she's become a singularity, a force of nature. We underestimated her. With her blazing purple eyes, the legendary Toki no Mi inherited from her mother Kyoheim focused her sights on the advancing clones. Her aura roared to life, crackling like a storm. With an explosion of speed, she charged forward, her movements a blur as gravity itself seemed to bow to her will. Kyoheim moved with terrifying grace, her blade cutting through the air with purple energy, each slash destroying a clone before it even had a chance to strike. The sheer power of her energy resonated as her attacks turned the clones to dust and ash. She screamed, mutation realm, have I no high, serpent's fire, as flames of dark energy erupted from her, engulfing several of the clones and reducing them to smoldering remains. The air crackled with her energy as she tore through her enemies, each fallen clone fueling her fury and pushing her closer to her target, Tawaria. Tawaria's eyes widened in disbelief. No, no, no. This isn't fair, he shouted, his voice rising in panic. These aren't even her true powers. She's cheating. His frustration bubbled into anger, and his aura began to flare. His own toroidal energy field pulsed, growing brighter and more volatile. With a grimace, Tawaria raised his massive paintbrush above his head, a twisted grin forming on his lips. Transformation 2, he muttered under his breath. In a single, fluid motion, the brush shifted before Kyoheim's eyes, twisting and reshaping into a jagged blade made entirely of the brush's bristles. The weapon gleamed with dark energy, pulsating alive with newfound power. Can be skipped. Narrator. Kagami no to the Sword of Reflection. Every samurai bears this name upon their blade, for each weapon is no mere tool of war, but a fragment of its master's soul, an extension of their very essence forged into steel. Born from the wielder's own spiritual energy, the sword is alive, evolving alongside its master through hardship, discipline, and resonance of the heart. Its strength is not separate from the one who wields it. The Kagami no to is only as powerful as its samurai. As the warrior transcends, so too does the blade, ascending through stages of transformation, unlocking new forms, and unveiling powers that mirror the growth of its master. In this way, the sword does not simply serve, it reflects, embodying the destiny of the one who forged it from spirit and soul. End of narration. Clone technique, Earth Realm Bunchen, Tawaria shouted as his hand sliced through the air, summoning a new wave of clones. These weren't the fragile imitations from before, these clones were stronger, their weapons forged from the brush blade, and each one radiated a dangerous aura. Attack her. Give me her blood. Tawaria screamed, his command ringing through the battlefield. The 5 clones, now equipped with their new, devastating weapons, charged toward Kyoheim in perfect unison. They moved like a storm, relentless in their pursuit of their target. Kyoheim's eyes narrowed as she prepared for the next phase of the fight. You want blood, then come and try to take it? With an explosion of speed, FTL+, Kyoheim launched herself forward, the air around her crackling with her toroidal energy field. As she rushed toward the oncoming clones, she reached into her sleeve, her fingers brushing against something hidden. Then, with a fluid motion, she summoned a tiny pink snake, its red eyes glowing with malevolent energy. The serpent coiled, its body shifting in size until it grew massive, its venomous fangs ready to strike. Without hesitation, the giant serpent shot forward, its body twisting and snapping through the air, faster than the eye could track. It barreled into 2 of the new clones, sinking its fangs deep into their flesh. The clones vanished in an instant, the serpent's poison overwhelming them completely. The remaining 3 clones, now consumed by fury, twisted and turned with unparalleled agility, darting through the air like shadows. One leaped atop the massive snake's head, its form a blur as it sprinted down the serpent's scales. On the opposite side, blades colliding in a dazzling storm of sparks. It was 3 against 1, a symphony of steel, each strike resonating like thunder. Energy blasts crackled through the air, streaking toward Kyoheim with deadly precision. She weaved and spun, her movements a blur of grace and ferocity. Some blasts tore through the serpent she had summoned, its massive form disintegrating in a shower of shimmering particles. One stray energy slash grazed her cheek, drawing a thin line of crimson. Blood splattered onto the ground, a stark reminder of the stakes. The clone surged forward. Kyoheim stepped back, her mind calculating, but one clone suddenly stopped mid-charge. Its eyes glinted with malice as it reached out, swiping a drop of her blood. The second clone held a defensive stance while the third retreated, darting back to Talwareya, who stood in the distance like a dark omen. Talwareya dipped his brush-like blade into the crimson droplet blood, a wicked grin spreading across his face. The air around him seemed to crackle with toroidal energy as he began painting intricate strokes on a scroll unfurling before him. "When I'm done with this painting," he murmured, his voice dripping with confidence, "your destiny will be mine. All it takes is a glance from this eye." His hand hovered over the eye patch covering his left eye, a subtle gesture that sent a chill through the air. Kyoheim's heart pounded. This is bad, she thought, her mind racing. He's pouring everything he has into that weapon. It's no ordinary blade, it's a conduit for something far more sinister. I have to stop him before it's too late. Summoning her strength, she launched herself forward. The clones intercepted her, their speed matching her every move. One by one, she dismantled them, each strike faster, each movement more precise. Her speed pushed the boundaries of light itself, her form a streak of brilliance. The final clone met her blade head-on in a furious exchange of blows, but Kyoheim's resolve proved unbreakable. With one decisive slash, she severed its head, and it disintegrated into nothingness. Her target now clear, she charged at Talwareya, her scream echoing across the battlefield. He remained focused, his brush moving with unnatural speed as he painted an intricate, crisscrossing scene. Kyoheim closed the distance, her blade poised for the killing blow. With all her might, she drove her sword into his chest. Talwareya staggered, blood pouring from his mouth onto the painting. Kyoheim's voice was steady but scathing. You're too slow, Talwareya. Too weak. True warriors fight with steel, not paint. The so-called art division of the samurai is nothing but a joke. Talwareya coughed, yet his smirk remained. You think you've won, he rasped. It's already too late. I've seen your fate, Kyoheim. I've drawn your fate. His trembling hand reached up, pulling away the eye patch to reveal a glowing white eye, its brilliance consuming everything in sight. Kyoheim's gaze shifted to the painting, her breath catching in her throat. There it was, a chilling depiction of her being stabbed through the heart by Talwareya. The realization struck her like a hammer. The air grew heavy, the rain ceased, and the sun emerged, its light growing unbearably bright. Talwareya's body began to dissolve into white light, his form vanishing into the ether. Kyoheim's horror deepened as she looked at her own arms, which were also beginning to fade, turning to luminous particles. No, she screamed, her voice filled with desperation. What have you done to me? When did you kill me? I can't lose. I won't lose. I have to avenge my mother, Akemi Yamamoto. She tried to flee, but her movements grew sluggish, her legs dissolving into the void. The world around her turned to nothingness, a consuming whiteness swallowing everything in its path. Just as the whiteness seemed eternal, her eyes snapped open. She gasped, the memory of annihilation etched into her soul. As Kyoheim's consciousness flickered back to life, her vision swam with hazy shapes before slowly sharpening. The world around her was alien and muted, but one image stood starkly clear, Talwareya looming above her, his brush-like blade embedded in her chest. She gasped, blood splattering her lips as she reflexively gripped the blade, her hands trembling and slick with her own crimson. How? She rasped, her voice fractured with pain. I stabbed you, in the chest. How am I down here? Talwareya chuckled, a deep, mocking sound that reverberated through the air like the toll of a death knell. His eyes gleamed with triumph, his smirk cutting deeper than his blade. I told you, Kyoheim, he said, his tone dripping with derision. I painted your fate. All I had to do was look at it. A twisted grin spread across his face as confidence brewed in his eyes. All I needed was your blood to make your destiny mine. Her strength waned, but her defiance burned. What does that even mean? Talwareya leaned closer, his voice soft but laced with a cruel edge. Let me enlighten you. The scroll I summoned, Mutation Realm Murai no Mi Oigaku. Painting the Eye of the Future, is no ordinary artifact. It's a quantum construct, a system of infinite possibilities layered into a single superposition. Every brush stroke aligns the atoms of reality, suspending them in a state where every potential outcome exists simultaneously, like particles in Schrödinger's thought experiment. He twisted the blade slightly, eliciting a strangled cry from Kyoheim as he continued. Each stroke of my brush encodes a potential future, manipulating the quantum waveform of existence itself. But it remains theoretical, suspended, until I collapse it, until I observe it with this eye. He tapped the glowing white eye, its light cold and unyielding. Once I gaze upon the painting, I collapse the quantum probabilities into a single, immutable reality. What you saw, the blinding white light, was the waveform collapsing, your destiny rewritten as my painting became the only truth. At that moment, Kyoheim, your life ceased to be your own. It was reduced to a mere variable in a system I controlled. Kyoheim struggled against the weight of his words and the pain in her chest. You're lying, she managed, though her voice lacked conviction. Talwareya smirked, his voice now almost admiring as he looked at her. Lying? No. I'm a visionary. I wield the universe's fundamental uncertainty like an artist wields a brush. Your atoms, your being, your very existence, it's all just energy and probability. And with my blade and this scroll, I made a choice that the universe had no power to deny. I painted you, Kyoheim. You, pierced by my blade, bathed in the radiant sunlight of your defeat. Beautiful. Poetic. Absolute. He laughed, a sound rich with malice and satisfaction. Your life is no longer your own. It's a superposition awaiting a decision, a destiny carved by someone stronger, someone with the will to collapse the infinite into the inevitable. And I chose. I chose this moment, this masterpiece of your demise. Kyoheim's mind raced, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of his power. Her fingers slipped from the blade as her strength began to fail, but her defiance flickered one last time in her eyes. You may wield this, power over reality, she hissed, blood staining her teeth as she forced a smile. But remember this, Talwareya. Even the strongest systems, eventually collapse. Kyoheim's eyes blazed with an intense purple light, their radiance growing stronger with every beat of her toroidal energy field. The sheer force of it surged outward, sending Talwareya flying backward, though his blade remained lodged in her chest. He crashed into the ground, stunned, staring at her in disbelief. How are you still alive? Still standing? Talwareya demanded, his voice edged with both anger and shock. Kiyohime stood tall, gripping the hilt of the blade buried in her chest. Blood trickled down her fingers as she pulled it free, her expression cold and unyielding. Because, she said, her voice low and venomous, no one chooses my fate. My destiny is no superposition to be collapsed at the whim of someone like you. I am the architect of my own future. And I've chosen it vengeance for my mother, no matter who stands in my way. Tawaria's eyes widened as he stumbled to his feet. Impossible. I destroyed your heart. I saw it, I stabbed you right there. Kiyohime tilted her head, a dark smile curling her lips as her hair fell around her face, casting a menacing shadow. As a samurai, you should have done your research. But you didn't. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm a half-demon, and more demon than human. Her voice dropped to a chilling whisper. I don't have a heart. Tawaria froze as her words sank in. Her glowing, bleeding eyes locked onto him, and her presence became suffocating. All you did, she continued, was stab flesh. She took a step forward, and the ground beneath her seemed to tremble. Her eyes bled streams of dark energy as her voice cut through the silence. It's time for this fight to end. I'll show you what true power is, my mother's power. Her eyes burned brighter, pulsating with ominous energy. Taishi, she roared, and a torrent of purple energy erupted around Tawaria, encasing him in a shimmering, unbreakable field. His body locked in place, frozen mid-motion. His face twisted in panic as he struggled against the invisible bonds. What is this? He rasped, his voice trembling. Kiyohime didn't answer. She walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate, her silence heavier than any words. Suddenly, her form blurred, vanishing from sight as she unleashed her super speed. In the blink of an eye, she reappeared in front of him, her blade aimed directly at his chest. This ends now, she screamed, her voice thundering like a storm. Her blade erupted with a violet glow, dark energy crackling and surging along its edge. Black ichor dripped from its surface, sizzling as it hit the ground. Mutation style, Jashin Serpent's Sting, she roared, plunging the blade into Tawaria's chest. The impact was cataclysmic. A surge of purple energy burst from the blade, enveloping Tawaria entirely. The field of energy intensified, disintegrating his body. His scream was swallowed by the roar of power as his form dissolved into ash and dust, scattered to the winds. As the dust settled, the battlefield fell silent. In the distance, a slow, deliberate clap echoed through the air. Kiyohime turned to see Nagare, her former master, standing with a smirk. Congratulations, Nagare said, his voice dripping with condescension. And you're right. The art division of the samurai is indeed a joke. He paused, his smirk widening, his tone sharpening. But now, the true test begins. Student versus master. Kiyohime steadied herself, her weapon trembling in her bloodied hand. Her body bore deep scratches, and her chest still ached from the gaping wound she had endured, the hole left by the blade she had ripped free. Her voice, though soft, carried steel. Step aside. I just want to reach the portal and get to the samurai headquarters. The main base. Nagare rested a hand on the hilt of one of the three swords at his side, each resting in its ornate sheath, the katana, the wakaizashi, and the tanto. Slowly, deliberately, he drew the katana. You're not going anywhere, he said, his tone laced with quiet determination. I don't think you understand how important you are. You might not carry the princess's blood, but to our leader, her father, Miyamoto Yamamoto, you are still family. For you to appear and accuse the prince of her murder would shake the very foundations of the clan. I cannot allow that. Kiyohime's grip tightened on her weapon as she raised it. You were always my favorite teacher, she said, her voice a mix of gratitude and resolve. My favorite master. You taught me everything I know, especially the mutation style. You're almost a full master of Toru Meiho, the art of bending energy. But that doesn't mean you're going to win. Her eyes blazed with determination, her body enveloped by a shimmering toroidal field of energy, its luminous rings spiraling in a mesmerizing dance from head to toe. The air crackled as her voice rang out, resolute and unwavering. I will stand before the council, she declared, her tone imbued with unyielding conviction. They will hear me. My mother, the princess, fought to shape our legacy. My grandfather, the great leader, forged our nation with his will. You won't stand in my way, not now, not ever. Nagare's expression softened into a faint smile as his own energy flared to life. His toroidal energy field pulsed with equal intensity, creating a luminous, celestial presence that matched hers. The battlefield seemed to shrink as their combined power warped the air around them, creating winds that howled and swirled with violent energy. With a fierce cry, Kiyohime charged forward, her eyes glowing brighter, her voice ringing out. My name is Kiyohime Yamamoto, and I won't be stopped. Nagare's energy surged as he raised his katana to meet her attack. Then come, Kiyohime, he said, his voice calm yet commanding, and prove it. Their blades clashed with a deafening roar, the force of their collision shaking the ground and sending shockwaves through the area. Their toroidal energy fields collided like two massive celestial bodies, their gravitational forces rippling outward in waves of raw power. The ground beneath them cracked and splintered as they exchanged blow after blow, their energy making the very air tremble. Nagare pushed Kiyohime back with a powerful strike, forcing her to skid across the battlefield. She caught her footing, her chest heaving as her eyes locked onto his. They stood frozen for a moment, their energies crackling in the air like a brewing storm, neither willing to back down. Nagare began to laugh, his tone mocking and cruel. You know what? You're already as good as dead, Kiyohime. His smirk widened as he took a step forward. I couldn't risk saying anything with Tawaria around, but now, he paused for dramatic effect, his voice lowering into a sinister growl. I'm tired of pretending, especially to a dead woman. Kiyohime's eyes narrowed, her grip on her katana tightening. Spill the beans about what, Nagare, she demanded, her voice filled with venom. Nagare's laughter faded, replaced by an icy calm that sent a shiver through the air. Yes, he admitted, his voice low but laced with twisted pride. His eyes gleamed like cold steel. The prince killed the princess. It was necessary. She disrupted the balance of power, granting you women and the Onabagacious sister clan more authority than you ever deserved. She dared to rewrite our laws, alter our traditions. In a society where every child was bound to the samurai path by the age of 9, she dared to give them a choice. She weakened us with her reforms, softening the discipline that made our nation strong. All because she was born first, she believed she could rule over men. Her arrogance sealed her fate. He stepped closer, his katana glinting menacingly. A true leader is our prince. We listen to him. At least, a small faction of us do. The rest, like Tawaria, obey the old fool Miyamoto Yamamoto and his council of samurai. But not me. Kiyohime's eyes burned with fury. I knew it, she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. How can you stand by and follow the prince when he's breaking the very rules of our clan? He's a traitor to everything we stand for. Nagar's expression darkened, his voice rising. The prince is no traitor, he spat. He is our savior. He's the warrior on fire, the chosen one foretold by the great Granny Sage. He is the future of our clan. Not the council. Not his weak old father, who was so feeble he handed power to his daughter over the rightful heir. Nagar raised his katana, pointing it toward Kiyohime. His power is greater than hers, greater than all of theirs. That's why I'll follow him to the ends of the earth, no matter what his commands are. And if that means silencing you, so be it. Kiyohime's voice rang with defiance. You're not silencing anything. Her glowing purple eyes flared even brighter as she whispered the magical word, Taishi. Instantly, waves of purple energy erupted from her, enveloping Nagar in a shimmering aura. His body froze mid-step, stiff as a board, the only movement in his face coming from his defiant eyes darting back and forth and his teeth and mouth. Nagar gritted his teeth, his voice laced with mockery. Impossible. You can't stop me in time, I transcend time. But then, a flicker of realization crossed his face. Oh. I forgot. The princess's ability bypasses that. He narrowed his eyes, voice dropping to a rasp. Interesting, he muttered, how you can use the princess's ability, even though you're not part of the bloodline. Can be skipped. Narrator. Narrator. Some beings wield the power to create higher dimensional time, a force so absolute that even entities who transcend ordinary time cannot escape it. Unlike the linear current of mortal time, higher dimensional time spirals, folds, and layers across realities. It is not merely motion but law, structure, and dominion. And it exists in ascending tiers. A field of 4-dimensional time governs only those bound within the 4th dimension. A 5-dimensional time field exerts authority over the 5th. This hierarchy ascends endlessly, through infinite dimensions and into domains that surpass dimensionality itself. The higher the temporal dimension, the more it eclipses whatever lies beneath it. Even in voids where time does not exist, higher dimensional time intrudes, rewrites the emptiness, and declares sovereignty. Those who have slipped beyond time still fall under its rule, for this is not time as they knew it, but a superior order that stands above their reality itself. Kiyohime stepped closer, her tone measured yet tinged with bitterness. You're right. I don't know what magic she used on me to grant me her powers, but I'm grateful. Even now, Akemi is looking out for me, protecting what she believed in. Suddenly, Kiyohime staggered, clutching her eyes as blood began to streak down her cheeks. The purple energy encasing Nagar flickered erratically. His lips curled into a twisted grin. You see, he sneered. You can barely handle that power. It's not yours, it's hers. And it's going to kill you the more you use it. Kiyohime's hands trembled as she wiped the blood from her face, her breath shallow. She forced herself to stand, pain coursing through her body. Her glowing eyes met his, fierce with determination. I don't care if it kills me, she gasped, her voice trembling but resolute. Because I'm going to kill you first. But her body betrayed her again, and she fell to her knees, blood dripping steadily from her face. Nagar laughed, the flickering purple energy dissipating with the surge of his own power. You can't handle it, he said, shaking his head. You're so weak. You're nothing like her. When Akemi wielded this ability, no one could move not their bodies, not their faces, not even their thoughts. She could freeze entire realms with just a glance. He took a deep breath, a dark incantation rolling off his tongue like venom. Kagami no Tu, transform. In a dazzling display, his 3 swords, the katana, Wakaisashi, and Tanto, began to glow. They merged in a blinding flash, fusing into a single weapon, Kagami no Tu, sword of reflection, reflecting the spirit. The blade radiated immense energy, its power coursing through Nagar as he shattered the remnants of Kiyohime's purple aura. Kiyohime forced herself to lift her head, her vision blurred with blood and tears. As Nagar approached her, his step slow and deliberate, she gasped in disbelief. It can't be, she whispered to herself, her heart sinking. But it was unmistakable. In Nagar's grasp was Kuzenagi no Tsurugai, its blade shimmering like liquid silver, radiating a faint, ethereal glow. Smoke like clouds coiled around the blade, their tendrils alive with flickers of thunder, crackling softly within and around the mist. The intricate wave-like patterns etched along its surface seemed to ripple as though they were carved from flowing water. The hilt, adorned with ornate golden and emerald engravings, pulsed with an aura of divine authority, a weapon forged by the heavens themselves. Nagar's grin widened as he loomed over her. Yes, Kiyohime. Behold the blade of legend. The weapon of kings. And now, your doom. As Nagar advanced slowly, the sinister gleam of his blade catching the light, Kiyohime mustered her remaining strength, forcing herself to stand determined. She charged at him with everything she had left. But his new weapon, the legendary Kuzenagi no Tsurugai, was overwhelming. In mere moments, their clash ended as Nagar's blade shattered her katana into fragments. All that remained in her hand was the ornate snake-shaped handle, trembling in her weakened grasp. She fell to the ground at his feet, her breath ragged as he loomed over her, a triumphant smirk spreading across his face. Your spiritual energy is weaker than mine, Nagar taunted, his voice laced with derision. That's why your Kagami no Tu sword of reflection is still stuck in its first transformation, a mere katana. Every samurai is granted this weapon when they begin their journey, but only those with true strength can unlock its full potential. He laughed, his laughter echoing like thunder. You're nothing compared to me. As Nagar's blade descended, time seemed to slow. Kiyohime lay motionless, her vision blurred by the tears welling in her glowing purple eyes. Her trembling voice escaped in a whisper, I'm sorry, for failing you. But as the blade drew closer, her mind raced, and the world around her froze. Her consciousness spiraled into a vivid memory, one so lifelike it felt like stepping back in time. Narrator, this is Kiyohime's flashback. She stood in the dojo, a spacious training room filled with young samurai of various backgrounds. The children, no older than 9, sat cross-legged in perfect stillness, their eyes fixed on the sparring match unfolding before them. Kiyohime, clad in a slightly disheveled gi, gripped her buken tightly. Across from her stood Valentina, a girl her age with striking blue eyes and hair that was a captivating mix of blonde and black, tied back in a sleek ponytail. Her toned frame radiated strength and precision, and she stood poised in a flawless samurai stance, her movements deliberate and calculated. The two locked eyes, their gazes fierce and unwavering, as if each could read the other's intent. Slowly, they began to circle one another, their steps measured, their focus unyielding, the tension between them growing with each heartbeat. The teacher, standing to the side, barked a single command, go. Kiyohime lunged forward, her attack swift and relentless. Valentina reacted immediately, her buken coming up to block with precision. The clash of their wooden swords echoed in the room. You know that never works, Valentina teased with a confident grin. Kiyohime smirked in response. We'll see about that. Her buken moved like a serpent, striking unpredictably. With a quick feint and a sudden twist, she broke through Valentina's guard and landed a strike squarely on her chest. Valentina stumbled back, falling to the floor with a soft thud. Kyoheim rushed to her fallen opponent, extending a hand to help her up. Good match, she said, her smile warm and genuine. Valentina accepted the help, brushing herself off. Yeah, thanks. But I'm still no match for you. You're so quick. If this were a real fight and we were using our Toru Meiho, she trailed off, her tone tinged with admiration. I'm so jealous of you. Before Kyoheim could respond, the teacher interjected, you shouldn't be. Both girls turned to face their instructor, confusion written on their faces. Kyoheim, frowning, asked, what's that supposed to mean? The teacher folded her arms, her expression firm. She's almost a perfect samurai. Her skill with the weapon is second to none, and her mastery of Toru Meiho is extraordinary. But look at her. She's a mess. Even before she arrived today, her hair was unkempt. She was late to training because she didn't clean her room. And look at her GI food stains all over it. Kyoheim's cheeks flushed with embarrassment and frustration. Clenching her fists, she snapped back, none of that matters. How is being neat and tidy supposed to make me a better samurai? That's why I want to train with the brother clan. They take being a samurai seriously. Her arms crossed defiantly as she glared at her teacher. The instructor sighed, pulling out a rolled newspaper and smacking it lightly against Kyoheim's head. See? That's exactly what I mean. No manners, no respect for your elders, the teacher scolded. Kyoheim rubbed her head, muttering, ow. The teacher continued, her tone soft but resolute. You may be right in some ways. Ever since your mother, Princess Akemi Yamamoto, was given equal leadership of the samurai clans by her father, the sister clan has gained the freedom to chart its own path, even to spar and train alongside the brother clan. But that freedom doesn't mean tradition should be cast aside. Manners, grace, femininity, family, and balance, these are just as vital as strength and skill. We are samurai, yes, but we are also women. Remember that. Kyoheim crossed her arms, a spark of defiance in her eyes. Well, I think it's an honor to be considered a weapon. That's my dream, to be a weapon, a samurai feared by all. The teacher sighed, a bemused smile creeping onto her face. Life isn't all about being a weapon, Kyoheim. Don't you want to get married one day, she teased, reaching out to grab Kyoheim's cheeks and give them a playful squeeze. You. Stop it. Kyoheim exclaimed, hurriedly batting the teacher's hands away. She grimaced, the tips of her ears turning red as she added, why would I want to do that? The room erupted with laughter. Many of the girls giggled at Kyoheim's reaction, their faces lit with amusement. Among them, some students looked every bit the image of serious samurai in training, their expressions focused and disciplined. Others carried themselves with a softer, more feminine demeanor, though no less intent on their training. The instructor turned to address the rest of the class. All of you, remember this. We must not lose our identity or become mere weapons like the boys' clan. As the laughter echoed through the dojo, a sharp, piercing ring broke through the mirth. All heads turned toward the corner of the classroom, where a bird was perched, squawking loudly. The teacher clapped her hands to regain control, her voice tinged with emotion. It looks like class is over, ladies. Don't forget, in an hour, you'll be attending your graduation ceremony to receive your first weapons Kagami no Tu, the Sword of Reflection. Her voice cracked as tears welled in her eyes. It has been an honor to teach you all. From this point forward, your paths will diverge. Some of you will take up the mantle of samurai, while others may choose the path of a wife. Whatever your choice, I wish you all the best of luck. The girls rose from their seats, their wooden practice swords slung over their shoulders. Chatter filled the air as they filed out of the dojo. Among them, Kyoheim and Valentina walked side by side. Valentina glanced at her friend. Why is the teacher always trying to convince you to get married? Kyoheim sighed, rolling her eyes. Partly because I'm the daughter of the princess. But I try to pretend like I'm not. I don't know why you'd want to, Valentina said wistfully. I wish I were the daughter of the princess. Kyoheim smirked, shrugging. It's not as great as you'd think. I have to get perfect grades, take etiquette classes, and deal with a ton of expectations. She paused to burp unapologetically. Plus, my mom doesn't even want me to be a samurai. She'd rather I follow the sisterhood's other path, becoming a wife. But I want to be just like her. Valentina grinned. I don't blame you. Your mom is so cool. She's not just a princess, she's a top-tier samurai. The only person who outranks her is your grandfather. As Kyoheim and Valentina strolled toward the lunch hall, a familiar figure stepped into their path. It was Li Xiao, her presence commanding attention. She was adorned in an elaborate red and gold silk uchi cake, the intricate patterns shimmering with every step. Her hair was styled in a traditional Nihongamai, adorned with ornate kanzashi hairpins that sparkled under the light. Tucked neatly into her obi was a small decorative dagger, a symbol of her proud samurai lineage. Li Xiao smiled warmly and pulled both Valentina and Kyoheim into a tight hug. I'm going to miss you too, she said, her voice soft but sincere. You've always been my closest friends at the academy. But now, we're graduating, and it's time to move on to bigger and better things. You two will walk the path of the samurai, and I'll take the path of a wife. I hope your journeys are full of success and honor. Kyoheim grinned, her confidence shining through. Don't worry about us. We're going to have a blast. And just you watch, we'll become the best samurai ever. She raised her fist in mock defiance. We'll show those boys we mean business. Valentina chuckled but quickly turned to Li Xiao, her tone becoming more serious. Aren't you scared? You're only 9, and starting a family already, getting married, such a big step. Li Xiao shook her head calmly, her expression unwavering. Not at all. It's an honor. My father has already chosen my fiancé. He's a high-ranking member of our clan. It's a good match, and I trust my family's decision. She gave a small nod of reassurance. But I do appreciate your concern. The three of them stood there for a moment, the weight of their diverging paths settling over them. Finally, Li Xiao bowed deeply, her hands folded elegantly in front of her. Goodbye, my friends. May our paths cross again someday. As Li Xiao walked away, her uchi cake swayed gently with each step. Valentina and Kyoheim watched her go, their emotions a mix of admiration and melancholy. Then, with renewed determination, they turned back toward the lunch hall, ready to face the challenges of their own chosen path. Kyoheim and Valentina made their way toward the lunch hall when they noticed 3 boys blocking the entrance, their antics drawing attention. Several samurai girls, their peers, tried to enter, but the boys stood in their way, mocking them. You don't deserve to be samurai, especially not warrior samurai, one of the boys jeered, a mocking smirk curling on his lips. Another chimed in, his tone dripping with scorn, you can't even get past me. You'll just slow us down. The first boy, Masatomo, had sharp black eyes and spiky jet black hair. He stood tall in a sleek black samurai outfit, his stance exuding arrogance. Beside him, Yasuke, with his short black spiky hair and deep brown skin, wore a striking black and blue samurai outfit that seemed to mirror his confident demeanor. Finally, William, a boy with light brown eyes and neatly combed brown hair, donned a vibrant red and blue samurai suit. His sneer matched the others, completing the trio of mockery as they towered in disdainful judgment. Kiyohim's lips curled into a sly smile. Without hesitation, she rushed toward the boys, her buken drawn in a swift motion. As she moved in for an attack, one of the boys stepped forward, meeting her strike with his own buken. The two wooden blades collided with a sharp crack, drawing gasps from the onlookers. Not again, one of the boys groaned. Not her. Kiyohime laughed, her confidence unshaken. What's the matter? Scared I'll beat you up again, she teased, her eyes gleaming with playful challenge. The boy scowled but tried to maintain his composure. No, we're not scared, he muttered, lowering his buken. We just don't want to get into trouble with the daughter of the princess. Before Kiyohime could respond, the heavy doors of the lunch hall swung open. A towering samurai teacher stood there, arms crossed, his stern expression enough to silence the chatter. Get in here, now, he commanded, his voice like steel. The ceremony is about to begin. It's time for you all to receive the Kagami no Tu, the sword of reflection. The boys quickly stepped aside, muttering under their breaths. Kiyohime shot them a triumphant smirk before striding confidently into the hall with Valentina by her side. Inside, the lunch hall was grand, with rows of long tables stretching across the vast room, each adorned with a variety of dishes from different cultures in homage to the diverse backgrounds of the samurai present. Despite their differences, everyone shared the common bond of the samurai code. At the far end of the room sat the high-ranking samurai, their presence imposing and dignified. The young students, boys and girls alike, were seated at the long tables, eating and chatting in anticipation of the upcoming ceremony. Kiyohime and Valentina found seats beside one another, the energy between them electric with excitement. Valentina watched with a bemused expression as Kiyohime devoured the food on her plate like a snake, her movements quick and precise. She couldn't help but laugh lightly before leaning toward her friend. You know the food's not going anywhere, Valentina teased. Relax. Kiyohime paused for a moment, glancing at her with a playful smirk. I'm just hungry, she muttered, returning to her meal with fervor. Valentina, still watching her with a hint of admiration, added, How are you always so brave? Back there with the boys, it's like you never hesitate to fight. It never seems like you're scared. Kiyohime, her eyes momentarily softening, gave a quiet laugh. I'm always scared, she said softly, looking away for a moment as if recalling something deep within her. I just fight through it. Before Valentina could respond, a sudden deep boom reverberated through the hall. Massive drums echoed throughout the room, their sound heavy and commanding, drawing the attention of every student. The atmosphere shifted, anticipation thick in the air. The event was about to begin. From the far end of the hall, the faint but dignified notes of traditional Japanese court music gagaku began to play. The instruments sounded like whispers of ancient times, the koto, the sho, the baiwa, and the steady beat of the taiko drums. Their solemn tones reflected the gravity of what was about to unfold, and the air seemed to thrum with the weight of history and tradition. Then, an old woman appeared at the front of the hall, her presence commanding and wise despite her age. She stood tall in a pristine white samurai robe, intricately embroidered with delicate silver threads that wove patterns of cranes in flight and blossoming sakura branches. The fabric shimmered faintly in the dim light, each movement revealing subtle shifts in texture, as though the robe itself breathed with quiet elegance. Her wide sleeves flowed gracefully, and the hem of her robe bore an ornate trim of gold, symbolizing her high rank and spiritual connection. In front of her, floating with otherworldly grace, was a swirling white energy ball, its radiance pulsing with power as if it had a will of its own. The room fell silent as the sage spoke, her voice both powerful and serene, as if every word carried the weight of centuries of wisdom. I am one of the great sages, the sage of prophecies, of wisdom, she said, her voice echoing throughout the hall. Let these future samurai come forth and touch my energy ball, Mirai no Ikai, and I shall direct which part of the samurai society you will be part of. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, swept across the room, as if she could see into the very souls of the young samurai before her. These are the divisions I will assign you to, she continued, her voice carrying an almost mystical reverence. Precision ballistics and ranged warfare. Blade combat and close quarters domination. Colossal weaponry and titan slaying techniques. Relic arms and mythic arsenal mastery. Strategic intelligence and espionage. The grand arts of creation and expression. Hand-to-hand combat Shinra Tekken, the absolute mastery of the body as a weapon. Long-range devastation and tactical bombardment. Demolitions and high-yield explosives. The veiled doctrine of assassination and silent eradication. Psychological subjugation and cognitive warfare. Interdimensional conquest and the art of dominion over realms. Most importantly, magic Toru Meiho, in all its forms, fire, water, earth, air, lightning, sun, and mutation. The weight of her words hung in the air as the students absorbed the significance. The Mirai no Ikai was not just a tool to assign them their roles, it was the essence of their future paths, guiding them to their destiny. And then, the sage added, her eyes now glowing with a deep, ancient wisdom, you will receive your own special weapon made from your own spiritual energy. It will be part of you for the rest of your life. You can never run away from it. Your own personal weapon Kagami no Tu, the sword of reflection. The atmosphere grew even more charged as the students began to slowly rise from their seats. One by one, they began to approach the sage, ready to touch the glowing Mirai no Ikai, knowing that this moment would define their futures as samurai. Kiyohime stood and walked toward Valentina, her face filled with determination. This is it, she said quietly. Our destinies are about to be set. Valentina nodded, a serious look on her face now. Let's make sure we get the path we deserve. Together, they moved with the others toward the sage, their hearts filled with anticipation for the future that awaited them. As Valentina and Kiyohime stood in line, their nerves running high, Valentina couldn't help but turn to her friend. I hope we get placed in the same division, she said with a quiet wish in her voice. Before Kiyohime could respond, there was a sudden flash of steel. A blade gleamed just inches from her face, causing her to freeze in surprise. Her eyes widened, and she instinctively stepped back, only to realize who stood before her. It was one of her masters, Nagare, the skilled swordsman who had taught her everything she knew. He lowered his blade and grinned at her, the familiar warmth of his smile cutting through her shock. You've got to be quicker than that, my future samurai, Nagare said with a playful glint in his eyes. Without missing a beat, he pulled her into a big, brotherly hug. I'm so proud of you, he added, lifting her off her feet for a moment. Kiyohime embraced the hug, her voice soft and filled with warmth. Master Nagare, it's so good to see you again. He gently set her back on her feet, his hands resting on her shoulders as he looked her over with pride. Valentina, watching closely, tilted her head and asked with curiosity, Kyoheim, is this why you're such a good swordswoman? Because you train with Nigare. Kyoheim responded quickly, her eyes lighting up as she smiled. Yes. I train with Nigare every day. He's like a big brother to me, she said, her voice full of admiration and affection. Nigare laughed warmly, his eyes softening. And you've always been the little sister I never had. I've been proud to watch you grow. After a moment of quiet camaraderie, Nigare turned toward the front of the line, his expression growing serious. I just wanted to see you both and wish you well before you begin your journey to becoming true samurai, he said, his voice filled with warmth and determination. Stay strong, both of you. Kyoheim gave him a final nod as he walked off, then turned to Valentina with a determined smile. This is it. We're so close. The line moved forward, and Kyoheim's heart beat faster with each step. Finally, it was Valentina's turn. The great sage, her golden robes shimmering with ancient power, turned toward her. Touch the orb of energy, the sage instructed in a voice filled with reverence. Valentina stepped forward, her hand shaking just slightly as she reached out. The moment her fingers brushed the surface of the glowing orb, it began to pulse with energy, shifting and swirling in response to her touch. The sage's eyes glowed white, her power activating. You shall be placed in the magic division, Toru Meiho, water style, the sage announced, her voice echoing throughout the hall. With a steady, commanding motion, the sage stepped closer to Valentina. Her right hand began to glow pure white, and Valentina felt a strange pull in her chest. Without warning, the sage's hand moved through her chest, and Valentina's eyes glowed white as well. In that instant, she felt something stir deep within her, and from the surge of energy, a weapon appeared. It was a Kizarigama, the curved sickle on a chain. The sage handed it to Valentina with care, saying, This is a very interesting first weapon, Kagami no to Sword of Reflection. Take care of it. Valentina accepted the weapon, her eyes wide with awe as she grasped the sickle's handle. It felt warm in her hands, as though it had been waiting for her. Next, the sage called, motioning to Kyoheim. Kyoheim's heart raced as she stepped forward. Her breath slowed with each step, but excitement burned in her chest. This is it. I'm going to be a samurai, just like my mother, she thought, feeling the weight of the moment. The sword she would wield, the path she would take, it was all about to unfold. Kyoheim's steps slowed as her gaze drifted toward the stage, where the most esteemed figure sat beside the great granny sage. At the center, commanding the eye, was the venerable Miyamoto Yamamoto. His face, etched with countless lines of age and wisdom, Japanese features, remained calm as his eyes rested closed in solemn composure. He sat upon a resplendent golden chair, its frame adorned with intricate carvings of dragons, their forms curling and coiling as though ready to leap to life. Draped across his frame was a striking blend of white and gold samurai armor, predominantly flowing cloth layered with plates of gleaming lacquered steel. The armor shimmered faintly, catching the light with every shift, projecting both regality and restrained power. Though still, his very presence filled the hall, dignified and commanding, like a living monument to an age of warriors. Beside Miyamoto Yamamoto, in her own dragon-adorned golden chair, sat Akimi Yamamoto, a vision of both elegance and power. Her resplendent samurai armor gleamed in hues of gold, black, and deep purple, the plates layered seamlessly with flowing cloth that moved like living silk. Her long black hair, kissed with violet undertones, cascaded over her shoulders, framing her distinctly Japanese features. Her piercing purple eyes seemed to glow with untold secrets, each glance carrying the weight of command and the mystery of hidden power. Around her, a crackling corona of energy pulsed and arced, faint bolts of violet lightning weaving through the air, making the atmosphere itself hum with her presence. Seated beneath the carved golden dragons that crowned her throne, she radiated the aura of a living legend, both warrior and matriarch, her beauty matched only by the strength that defined her. On the opposite side of the stage sat the prince, his very presence radiating divine authority. He was clad in a dazzling samurai uniform of white and gold, accented with streaks of muted gray that lent a sharp edge to the brilliance of his attire. His white hair framed his stern, distinctly Asian features, a reflection of his father and sister's lineage, and his golden eyes glowed with such intensity that they seemed almost blinding, as though the sun itself resided within them. Yet, for all his majesty, his expression betrayed a simmering annoyance, as though he found the ceremony beneath him, or the company unworthy of his time. He sat slouched slightly in his own grand chair, a counterpart to the others, a golden throne adorned with coiling dragon carvings, their eyes gleaming as though alive. Around his body, golden flames flickered into existence at random, sparks of power that hissed and vanished as quickly as they appeared. The air near him shimmered with heat, a living testament to the immense force he contained and could unleash at will. He was both prince and storm, sovereign by right and terrifying by nature. As Kyoheim approached, she caught her mother's eye. Akimi smiled and nodded at her, a silent expression of pride and affection that filled Kyoheim's heart. The air around her felt charged with anticipation, and her heart thudded in her chest. She was about to join the ranks of the samurai, standing before some of the most powerful people in her world. The great granny sage's eyes locked onto Kyoheim as she reached the orb. You are an interesting young lady, the sage said, her voice steady yet filled with curiosity. Are you the princess's daughter, if I'm not mistaken? Kyoheim nodded, her voice calm yet proud. Yes, I am, Madam Sage. The sage's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Ah, yes, of course. You are not her daughter by blood. She paused, a hint of realization in her voice. That's why you must go through the same process by law, as required by the samurai code. You cannot automatically become a leader without the bloodline. You must earn your place. Kyoheim's heart pounded. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the Mirai no Ikai, the energy orb, as instructed by the sage. The orb suddenly darkened to pure black, and a wave of energy shot through the air. The sage's eyes flared white, then shifted to a brilliant yellow, the light so intense it seemed to fill the entire hall. The energy from the orb pulsed violently, and the sage suddenly stumbled, falling to the ground. A collective gasp swept through the crowd as servants rushed to aid the fallen sage. What's wrong, Madam Sage? One of the servants asked frantically. The sage's voice trembled as she spoke. Her future, it is clouded by mystery. The room fell silent, a tension-filled pause hanging in the air. And then, an unexpected voice broke the stillness. It was Miyamoto Yamamoto, the venerable leader of the samurai. His voice cracked with a cough as he spoke, his eyes filled with concern. What do you mean? You are the sage of prophecies. You cannot see her future? How is this possible? The sage struggled to sit up, her face pale. I'm sorry, master, she said, her voice strained. But all I can tell you is that her future lies in magic Toru Meiho, specifically the mutation style. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, whispers breaking out among the crowd. Mutation style, it was a name few had heard in generations, a path that was as mysterious and feared as it was rare. Kyoheim felt the weight of the murmurs around her, her ears ringing with the curious and judgmental voices of the assembly. Mutation style, someone whispered. But, it's been ages since anyone was chosen for that path. Another voice spoke harshly, she's half demon. Why would a princess adopt someone like that? Kyoheim's grip tightened on the orb, her face a mixture of confusion and resolve. She had always known she was different, but hearing the crowd's judgment stung. A voice broke through the whispers. A samurai near the front of the room spoke to Kyoheim directly, his tone more respectful than the others. You are very fortunate, Kyoheim. The mutation style is extraordinarily rare. Your teachers will be ancient, old teachers, for it has been many lifetimes since anyone has received the title of mutation style. The great granny sage, her eyes still glowing, looked at Kyoheim with a solemn expression. Now, it is time for me to unlock your sword, Kagami no to sword of reflection. She raised her hands, and they began to glow white, shimmering with magical energy. Slowly, she placed her hands on Kyoheim's chest, preparing to summon her weapon. But as the sage's hands neared Kyoheim's chest, the orb flared up once more, and the sage's eyes shifted from white to gold. Panic flashed across the sage's face, and she hurriedly pulled her hands back. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the sage fumbled, then drew a weapon from within Kyoheim. In her hands was a katana with a snake-shaped hilt, its handle intricate and coiled, as though the weapon itself had a life of its own. The blade glowed faintly, its presence both terrifying and beautiful. As the sage's trembling hands gripped the blade, her strength faltered, and she collapsed to the floor. The crowd gasped in shock, murmurs spreading like wildfire. What is happening? Some cried, as servants rushed to her aid, lifting her frail form from the ground. Kyoheim, her heart pounding, instinctively grasped her newly forged weapon, the Kagami no to sword of reflection. The ancient katana hummed in her hands, a powerful connection forming in that fleeting moment. As the servants struggled to help the sage, the old woman slowly rose, her energy returning to her as though it had been summoned by the blade itself. No, this cannot be, the sage muttered, her eyes wide with disbelief. It has been centuries since I have witnessed such a thing. A new prophecy, a new prophecy. The crowd, now in hushed awe, whispered amongst themselves, new prophecy. A new prophecy. The air grew thick with tension as they all waited for the sage to speak. Miyamoto Yamamoto, the revered leader of the samurai, stood up slowly, his voice gravelly with age but filled with determination. You have seen a new prophecy, sage. What is it? Tell us. But before the sage could speak, the prince, regal as ever, intervened, his voice powerful and elegant. Father, sit down, he implored. Do not overexert yourself. Your heart is frail. Please. Akimi Yamamoto, her voice filled with concern, echoed her brother plea. Please, father, calm yourself. I know how much these prophecies mean to you, how they have guided you through life's most perilous trials. But your health cannot bear such strain. Miyamoto Yamamoto looked at his children, a proud smile curving his lips despite the concern in their voices. I am fortunate, he said softly, to have such loving children who will protect me until my last breath. Turning his gaze back to the sage, he asked once more, his voice filled with reverence, what is this prophecy, sage? The sage's eyes flickered, returning to their luminous glow as she summoned the Mirai no Ikai, the energy orb, once more. It pulsed with an ancient light, its aura shifting and swirling, forming into the words the sage was about to speak. Her voice grew deep and resonant, like the echo of a distant drum, as if the words themselves carried the weight of the ages. She intoned with great solemnity. There is a warrior of fire. His flames are not of destruction, but of pure compassion. He is of this age, yet his spirit has incarnated anew. His form is rational, but his fire consumes all. His words change hearts as the winds change the seasons. They are the flames that burn away ignorance, casting light into the darkest corners of the world. As the sage spoke, the orb shaped itself, revealing an image blurry, ethereal of a warrior bathed in fire, his eyes burning with a fierce intensity. The flames swirled around him, but instead of rage, they held a deeper truth, a truth of unity and awakening. His golden eyes shall shatter ignorance, breaking the chains that bind the minds of men. His fire will spread, not in wrath, but in mercy, uniting the realms, the mythologies, the very fabric of existence. No corner of the omniverse will escape his gaze. His compassion will fuel his rage, and his rage will purify the world. In time, he will unite all peoples, bring them to peace, and free the realms to stand alone in their own glory, unchained and unbroken. A ripple of gasps echoed through the crowd, each word heavy with meaning, yet all the more enigmatic. The prince, his gaze sharp with an unmistakable gleam of recognition, murmured under his breath, eyes of gold, such power cannot be rivaled, this is a matter of great intrigue. Miyamoto Yamamoto, now leaning forward with intense focus, struggled to rise from his seat, his voice raw from the strain. With each labored breath, his words were heavy with urgency. Where, he demanded, his tone fierce yet tinged with reverence. Where is this warrior? I have seen him in my dreams. The Buddha himself appeared to me in a vision, declaring that a warrior such as this would rise. Tell us, sage, reveal what you know. We must know more. The sage nodded solemnly, her eyes glowing brighter, her voice lowering to a reverent whisper. This warrior is shrouded in mystery, his true form elusive even to the highest of sages. But I see more now, his essence is not new. He is an incarnation of one who has walked this earth before, a warrior whose name echoes in the hallowed halls of legend. He is the fist of Buddha, the protector of realms, the one known as Vajra, the fighting bodhisattva, the fist of the thunderbolt, the compassion of Dharma. The crowd fell silent, as the weight of these words sank deep into their hearts. Some gasped in recognition, others trembled with awe. The name of Vajra carried great power, its echo reverberating through the halls of time itself. The old man, Miyamoto Yamamoto, trembled as the realization dawned on him. I have seen him in my dreams. The Buddha spoke to me of this warrior, and now I understand. He fell back into his seat, his body shaking with the enormity of what had been revealed. Vajra, he whispered, reverence filling his voice. The prince leaned in, his eyes flickering with something darker, more intense. Yes, this is the one we have awaited. His power will change everything. The sage's energy orb pulsed one last time, her voice soft but filled with certainty. The prophecy is clear, and it is ancient. The warrior will return, and through his flames, the world will be reborn. He will unite us all, and in his wake, the realms will know peace. As the last words faded into the silence, the other young samurai, boys and girls alike, were handed their Kagami no to, the sword of reflection. One by one, they received their blades, and the ceremony began to close. The crowd slowly dispersed, their thoughts consumed by the prophecy they had just witnessed. Kiyohime, her heart still racing from the weight of the prophecy, made her way back home with her mother. The two sat together in the living room, the warmth of their home a stark contrast to the monumental truths revealed that day. The words of the sage, the prophecy, echoed in Kiyohime's mind, a warrior of fire, a warrior of compassion. She felt the weight of the future pressing upon her, the sword of reflection resting at her side as the beginning of her own journey unfolded. As the two sat together in the grand dining hall, savoring their meal in the warmth of their home, Akemi Yamamoto, with a stern yet caring gaze, spoke to her daughter. You better train hard to become a samurai, she said, her voice holding the weight of experience. Your new weapon looks very nice. The snake handle matches you well. Kiyohime, her eyes gleaming with determination, nodded as she continued to eat, her movements quick and primal. She devoured her food with no regard for etiquette, using her hands with the same ferocity as a snake would strike its prey. Her mother's words barely registered as Kiyohime's focus remained on the meal. Akemi Yamamoto sighed, a hint of amusement and frustration in her voice. All those years of etiquette classes for no reason, and you still don't use a spoon. How do you ever expect to get married? Kiyohime's eyes narrowed, the fire of resolve burning brightly within them. She paused for a moment, then bit back. Can you stop bringing that up? I don't want to get married, ever. She continued, her voice steady yet fierce. I want to be a warrior. A weapon. I want to be a warrior for our country. Our clan. Just like you, Mom. You're not married. You don't have children, except for me, and even then, you adopted me. Akemi Yamamoto's expression softened, but her eyes remained intense, filled with the burden of both love and duty. I want you to be better than me, she said quietly, her tone heavy with years of sacrifice. I had no choice as the leader of the samurai. My father had expectations. But you can choose a different path. I want you to have a better life than mine. You are a future princess, Kiyohime. Act like one. Kiyohime's lips tightened, her resolve unshaken. I don't want to be a princess, she declared. I want to fight, to defend, to protect. I want to forge my own path, just like you did when you chose to be a warrior instead of a wife. She stood, grabbing her new weapon, Kagami no Tu, the sword of reflection, feeling its weight settle into her grip like an extension of herself. Akemi Yamamoto's gaze turned sad but understanding, her voice tinged with the wisdom of experience. Fine, but just know this, the life of a warrior is short, and the life of a wife with a family, that's forever. Her voice dropped, a quiet plea that echoed the weight of all the choices she had made. Kiyohime glanced at her mother, her eyes unyielding as she responded, dying as a warrior for your country also lasts forever. Being a weapon, a legendary warrior will be known through all of history. She stood tall, her presence like the storm before the battle. The sword felt alive in her hands. I'm going to train now. With a swift, purposeful motion, Kiyohime left the room, her footsteps echoing in the expansive mansion, the path ahead of her unclear yet full of promise. Kiyohime entered one of the massive training rooms of the mansion, the dojo designed for warriors of her caliber. The vast space, with its polished wooden floors and intricate patterns, seemed to hum with the energy of past battles. She stood before the mirror, her figure reflected as she practiced with her newly forged Kagami no Tu, the sword of reflection. Each swing of her blade was calculated, swift, and precise as she honed her skills, perfecting both hand signs and spells. The glow from the blade illuminated the room as she weaved her magic, pushing her limits. Exhausted from the relentless training, Kiyohime wiped the sweat from her brow, ready to leave. But just as she was about to turn away, her sharp eyes caught something unusual. In the corner of the dojo, almost hidden in the shadows, was another sword. Her jaw dropped in disbelief. There's no way. She murmured, walking toward it. A master samurai left one of his swords behind. The sword before her was not a Kagami no Tu, not a blade made from spirit energy, this was a different weapon altogether. Its aura was darker. It didn't carry the same sacred presence as her sword, which made it more accessible. A mere enchanted blade, she realized. Kiyohime reached for it, her fingers curling around the hilt, feeling its weight in her hands. She gave it a few experimental swings, delighting in the balance and ease of movement. It was a perfect practice weapon. As she continued to swing, her movements fluid and instinctual, the blade began to glow with an eerie light. The room around her began to warp, the air itself bending. She felt a sudden pull, and in the blink of an eye, Kiyohime was no longer in the dojo. She found herself in a completely unfamiliar space. She blinked in confusion, looking around. The walls were dark, adorned with ancient relics and strange markings. At the center of the room, a line of pristine swords stood, each gleaming with power. Where am I? She whispered to herself. She took a step back, her heart pounding. The room felt ancient, filled with the weight of countless warriors who had come before her. Her mind raced as she realized what had happened. The sword had transported her. Kiyohime mutters to herself, I must have done something to trigger the sword, a spell or something that caused it to teleport me and itself back to its rightful place. Kiyohime's ears picked up the faintest sounds, footsteps, the soft shuffle of heavy armor against the floor. Her instincts flared, and without a second thought, she darted behind a buken dummy, her heart thudding in her chest. I shouldn't be here, she thought, her grip tightening around a master samurai's sword. I never should have touched it. She crouched low, trying to control her breathing, each inhale and exhale steady but frantic. The sounds grew louder, creaking wooden doors, the clink of metal, footsteps drawing nearer. Her pulse quickened. They're coming. The heavy door slowly groaned open, and dark, imposing figures began to fill the room, tall, regal figures clad in golden samurai armor. They moved with grace and authority, their every step echoing like the whispers of an ancient tradition. These are no ordinary warriors, Kiyohime realized, her eyes widening. These are past black belts. High-ranking samurai. She strained to keep her presence hidden, watching as they entered. The sound of their armor clinking in unison filled the room as they gathered in a circle. Then, the room grew still. Kiyohime's eyes widened as the last figure entered, the prince. Clad in the same regal gold armor as the rest, his mere presence exuded authority, and the room seemed to grow still in his wake. The samurai, their postures rigid with respect, bowed their heads in silent acknowledgement before taking their seats. As Kiyohime crouched behind the buken dummy, her heart pounding, she overheard the low murmurs of the samurai around her. The tone of their conversation was sharp and filled with discontent. Your sister, Akemi Yamamoto, has made us appear weak, one of the samurai muttered, his voice hard with resentment. She has altered the strategy we followed for generations. The military has grown soft under her rule. Women now march alongside men in our ranks, and citizens are given too much leeway. Conquered lands were returned at her command, and our system of justice has faltered. The trade agreements with other realms are in chaos, and our leadership is fractured. This weakness cannot stand, Prince, you should be leading us. Kia-him's grip tightened around the sword at her side, her pulse quickening at the vehemence in their voices. She dared not move, but she could not tear her ears away from their words. The prince's voice, smooth and measured, cut through the tension. I hear your complaints, he said, his tone calm and unwavering. But the decisions of my father, however misguided, stand for now. Akimi's reign will not last. The changes she has put in place will be undone when I assume command. I have foreseen this. These eyes never deceive. What I envision will come to pass. My eyes are all-powerful. Suddenly, he paused, his sharp gaze sweeping the room. There is an intruder, he said coldly, his voice laced with warning. Kia-him's heart sank. I'm caught, she thought, her mind racing. I shouldn't be here. Her breath quickened, panic setting in, but before she could act, her body was lifted from the ground by an invisible force. In an instant, she was no longer in the training room. She stood alone in an empty, stark white space, the silence suffocating. She was force teleported to a higher realm. Where am I? Kyoheim whispered, spinning in confusion. What have you done? The prince's voice echoed from behind her, his tone unchanging. You did not hear this conversation, he said softly, and then he placed a finger to her forehead. Before she could respond, the world around her shifted once more, and in the blink of an eye, she was back in her room, disoriented and breathless. The weight of the encounter lingered, leaving her with more questions than answers. Had it been real? Or had it been some strange vision? Narrator, and with that, Kia-him's flashback came to an end. The scene shifted back to the present, where the fierce battle between her and her former master, Nagair, raged on. Narrator, Kyoheim knelt on the ground, her hands and knees supporting her as Nagair loomed above her, poised to strike with his new blade. Lightning crackled from the blade's tip, a storm of power ready to surge toward Kyoheim's back. A solitary tear rolled down Nagair's face, his voice soft yet resolute. I'm just doing my job. But as the memory of her past began to surface, Kyoheim's confidence returned. Her broken sword, Kagami no to sword of reflection, lay shattered before her, the handle still intact. Energy swirled around her and the remnants of the sword, a toroidal field of magic that radiated with raw power. The energy surged, forcing Nagair to be sent flying, skidding across the ground in the wake of her rising power. Kyoheim stood tall, her aura enveloping her like an unstoppable force. With steady hands, she picked up the handle of her broken sword. Slowly, the pieces of the blade began to reassemble, glowing with the power of her will. As the sword took shape once more, she spoke with quiet determination, those memories helped me realize who I am, and what I fight for. And that's my family. The sword, now fully restored, pulsed with a brilliant purple glow, the energy surrounding it crackling with intensity. Kyoheim's eyes glowed with the same purple energy, mirroring her mother's gaze but with newfound strength. The sword, now reformed, was a perfect blend of beauty and deadly purpose. The handle, black and shaped like a serpent, the blade was dark, with a violet energy pulsating around it. The handle was black, coiling like a serpent, cool to the touch, yet radiating an eerie, unnatural warmth. At the tip, the words Lady Death were inscribed in jagged, unsettling lettering, carved by a force beyond human hands. The blade itself was a deep, shadowy violet, its edges sharp. They were forged in the darkest corners of the underworld. A pulsating energy, dark and ominous, wrapped around the blade in swirling tendrils, like a storm trapped within steel. Black and purple veins snaked their way up the blade, as though the weapon itself was alive, feeding on the very darkness it wielded. The serrated edges were reminiscent of Inishuk's Nichiren blades, but with an added sinister twist, red-tinted, like blood soaked in shadows. This is my sword's transformation, Kyoheim declared, her voice steady and fierce, her grip tightening as the blade hummed with dark power. Its new name. Shino Tanjo, the birth of death. The blade seemed to vibrate with malevolent energy, its power growing with each passing second, as if it were ready to consume everything in its path. Nagair, with a tear still lingering in his eye, gritted his teeth. Why don't you just die? Why do you have to make this so difficult? Kyoheim's resolve only grew stronger. I finally unlocked my sword's true form, but I have to use it on you. She stood her ground, her energy crackling, as she offered one last plea. We don't have to do this. You can just let me go. We're like family. But Nagair's resolve hardened, and the energy around him swirled violently. His tears were swept away as he spoke, his voice cold and unwavering. I am a samurai. I am a weapon. I do only what I am told. Kyoheim's mind flashed back to when she was a child, a fleeting moment of innocence. I want to be a weapon, the greatest weapon ever. A tool to be used. With those words echoing in her heart, both warriors assumed their fighting stances. The battlefield crackled with anticipation, and with a surge of energy, they charged at each other, two forces of nature about to collide in a final, fateful battle.